Good morning, Cornerstone. This morning we're going to talk about a woman named Martha who was a disciple of Jesus a long time ago. Martha, when she met Jesus, her life had completely fallen apart. But it wasn't totally her fault. A long time ago, before Martha was even born, God had created this world perfect and entrusted it to some people. Rather than make them robots and force them to do what he wanted, he gave them freedom to choose his way or to choose their own way. And often those people chose their own way, and as a result, the world became a worse place. Even Martha's specific ancestors, the people of Israel, had opportunity to follow God and do some of the things that he called them to do. And often they chose their own way, and the world became a worse place, and Martha suffered for that. And then finally, when Martha herself got a chance at living her life, and she was born and had the opportunity to follow God in a lot of ways in her life, rather than choose to follow God, she went her own way, causing her life to fully fall apart. Until she found herself in a situation where she was pretty hopeless. Her life wasn't what it was supposed to be. She finds herself living with her sister and her brother, trying to make ends meet, when she begins to hear about Jesus, that the Messiah has come and that God is interested in putting their life back together. Believing in Jesus changed her life. Now, at that point in her life where things had fallen apart and she began to believe in Jesus, stuff started to be different for Martha. As she met Jesus, he began to call her to a different kind of life. Martha had been an extremely busy and stressed out person. Someone who was constantly moving, constantly working to get ahead, very stressed and worried about many things. And as Jesus began to speak into her life, he began to call her to be someone who, rather than being worried all the time, was someone who trusted God. And even though Martha began to see that and see who he was calling her to be, she recognized that that is not who she was, that she was far from that. She worried a lot. She stressed a lot. And she wasn't living a life of peace based on the gospel. So in that moment where she realizes she's not who God's called her to be, she's not who Jesus is calling her to be, she begins to trust in him. And both through her experience of Jesus' grace and her experience of his calling on her life, she begins to grow into the person he's called her to be. She begins to relax. She begins to get less stressed out. She begins to be more interested in understanding what Jesus' purpose is in her life rather than just her own. She begins to grow until eventually she kind of starts to become the person God's called her to be. But about the time she starts to see that some of what Jesus has been calling her to is starting to become true in her life, she continues to see God more clearly and realizes that he's calling her to even more faith. And this especially becomes apparent at a time of crisis in her life, as she thinks she trusts in Jesus, believes that he can do anything, that he can take care of her, that he can take care of her sister, that he can take care of her brother. They get this terrible news that Lazarus has died. And her brother passes away, and she is shocked by this because she has seen Jesus heal so many people and take care of so many people's problems, and she thinks, why is this what's happening? And now Martha is facing the same question that we face. When we see the difference between who God is asking us to be and who we really are, when we see the difference between what God thinks we can handle and what we think we can handle, will Jesus be enough to bridge that gap? And that is the question we ask today.